Today we're analyzing a landmark decision out of the Supreme Court of Ohio that addresses a complex, decades-old administrative loop known within the constitutional law as a regulatory catch-22. This case fundamentally tests the intersection of state sovereignty, federal statutory interpretation, and the mechanism by which a citizen's constitutional protections under the Second Amendment can be legally rehabilitated. Welcome back to the channel. My platform serves as a dedicated legal media archive and analytical resource for constitutional law, statutory interpretation, and Second Amendment jurisprudence. That's a fancy way of saying that I love what you love, and I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about this, and hope that you take this information and run with it. Rather than relying on superficial headlines or political commentary, I break down the complex appellate court rulings, legislative texts, and federalism conflicts with the structural academic precision I think you deserve. My goal is to provide you with objective, document-driven clarity on how our foundational civil liberties are being defined in the courts. If you value deep dive legal analysis and want to stay informed on the mechanics of constitutional law, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and join our community of advocates here. For years, individuals who successfully completed their judicial sentences found themselves trapped in a circular legal paradox. Under federal statutory frameworks, specifically Section 922G Golf of Title 18, USC, U.S. Code, certain state convictions trigger an automatic suspension of firearms possession privileges for life. However, the federal apparatus explicitly defers to state mechanisms for the restoration of those civil rights. The paradox emerged when state courts refused to hear petitions for restoration, citing the existence of the federal ban as an independent barrier. On June 2nd, 2026, the Supreme Court of Ohio issued a definitive 6-1 ruling in the matter of State versus Heffley, breaking this cycle and clarifying the exact boundaries of state judicial authority. Today, I'm going to unpack the legal mechanisms of the decision, the statutory wording that divided the court, and what this means for the broader framework of constitutional rights restoration across the United States. To understand how this case reached the state's highest court, we have to look at the petitioner, Patrick Heffley. In 2026, Heffley was convicted in Allen County of domestic violence, a misdemeanor offense under Ohio state law, but one that carries a significant long-term constitutional consequence. Under the federal Lattenberg Amendment, any conviction for a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence creates a lifetime federal prohibition against possessing firearms. Heffley fully served his court-mandated sentence, paid all assessed financial penalties, and completed all terms of his rehabilitation. In 2023, nearly 2 decades after his conviction, he utilized the established statutory framework in Ohio to petition for a restoration of his firearms rights. He applied under Ohio's relief from disability statute, which is the formal legal mechanism for citizens seeking to have their constitutional rights reinstated after proving rehabilitation. However, the local prosecutor's office argued that the court lacked the statutory authority to grant the relief. Their argument rested on a specific phrase within Ohio law that prohibits the reinstatement of rights if an individual is, quote, otherwise prohibited by law, end quote, from acquiring or using firearms. The state argued that because the federal 18 U.S.C. Section 922G prohibition remained active, Heffley was otherwise prohibited, meaning the state court's hands were tied. Now, this created a classical legal circle, right? The federal government wouldn't lift its restriction unless the state restored the right, but the state claimed it couldn't restore the right because the federal restriction existed. Now, Heffley appealed the denial, sending the case through the 3rd District Court of Appeals and ultimately to the Ohio State Supreme Court to resolve this fundamental question of statutory interpretation, right? If neither one's going to do anything because the other side budges, how does he get his rights back? The majority opinion was authored by Justice R. Patrick DeWine, and it provides an exceptional masterclass in textualist statutory interpretation. Justice DeWine focused entirely on the precise definition of the word otherwise within the phrase otherwise prohibited by law. It was pretty good. The court looked at standard definitions and determined that otherwise means, quote, in a different way or manner, end quote. Therefore, to be otherwise prohibited, the barrier to your constitutional rights must stem from a completely separate, independent legal matter, such as an unrelated felony conviction, an active protection order, or a distinct jurisdictional issue. And because the federal prohibition and the state disability in Heffley's case originated from the exact same 2006 conviction, the court ruled that the federal ban did not constitute a different or separate prohibition. It was merely the federal echo of the exact same offense. Justice DeWine wrote that because the state and federal disabilities arose from the same self-legal event, the petitioner was not otherwise prohibited. And consequently, the state court possessed full jurisdiction to hear the petition and grant relief. And this distinction is critical for supporters of the Constitution, as it reaffirms that federal regulations cannot be used by state actors to infinitely nullify the state's own sovereign process for restoring civil liberties. And under the federal framework, if a state restores a citizen's civil rights, the federal disability is automatically dissolved. And by opening the doorway for state-level relief, the Ohio Supreme Court effectively provided the key to unlocking this federal restriction as well. To maintain a completely rigorous analysis, we have to examine the lone dissenting opinion, the one person in the 6-1 decision who didn't think the way that the others did. And this was delivered by Justice Jennifer Brunner. And Justice Brunner took a strictly literalist approach to the phrase, arguing that otherwise prohibited by law means exactly what it says on the surface. If any law, state or federal, currently bars you from owning a firearm, a state court cannot intervene. Now, this justice acknowledged the existence of the systemic loop, explicitly calling it a catch-22. In her dissenting text, she noted that the mutual dependence of the state and federal prohibitions creates a situation where the existence of one makes it mathematically and legally impossible to remove the other. However, her conclusion differed sharply from the majority. Instead of resolving the loop judicially, she argued that it was not the role of the court to fix poorly drafted statutes. She stated, quote, "That situation is for the General Assembly to address, if it wishes to do so," end quote. Now, this dissent highlights a classic debate within the American court system, American jurisprudence. Should the judiciary, should the courts interpret statutes to avoid absurd, unconstitutional outcomes that trap citizens in an endless loop, or should they enforce the strict, flawed text and force the legislature to pass corrective amendments? And the majority ultimately decided that constitutional protections require a logical interpretation that allows the statutory mechanism for rights restoration to actually function. Now, the implications of State versus Heffley extend far beyond the borders of Ohio. This ruling establishes a powerful judicial precedent for how state Supreme Courts interpret interaction between local relief mechanisms and federal restrictions. It reinforces a foundational principle of federalism. The federal government relies on state definitions of convictions and state methods of restoration to determine who may exercise their Second Amendment protections. Now, it's important to emphasize that this ruling does not automatically alter the application criteria or lower the standards for public safety. And individuals who have been convicted of violent offenses must still undergo, quite honestly, a rigorous judicial process. They must petition a court of law, present evidence of complete rehabilitation, and convince a judge that they no longer pose a risk to public safety before any rights are reinstated. And what this ruling does change is the removal of an artificial procedural barrier. It ensures that the state cannot use a federal regulation as an excuse to avoid its constitutional duty to provide a pathway for the restoration of a citizen's civil rights. It affirms that when the citizen has paid their debt to society, the legal system must provide a functioning, transparent avenue to reevaluate their standing under the law. Now, as we track the evolution of Second Amendment rulings and jurisprudence across the country, the intersection of administrative law and constitutional protections remains one of the most critical battlegrounds for us. The Ohio Supreme Court's decision represents a significant structural clarification in favor of due process and statutory clarity, which is rare. And I want to hear from you here and see what your perspective is. Do you agree with the majority's interpretation of the text of the word otherwise, or do you think the dissent, that one justice, was correct, that this issue should have been sent back to the state legislature to rewrite? Now let's get a good, solid discussion going in the comments below. And if you value a deep dive into the textual breakdowns of constitutional law, these statutory interpretations, and federalism, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one. God bless you. God bless America. Take care.